You're now listening to Hispanics Causing Panic, baby. Let's do this.
Right now, Hispanics are causing black. But right now, Hispanics are causing black. Yeah, folks, Hispanics are causing panic.
Archive. How's it going, Lyndon? Glenn, how's it going, brother?
I'm good, mate. Can you hear me all right?
Pretty good, pretty good. I have Lyndon on every Monday, and I just called you Lyndon. So I apologize.
Oh, he's a good mate of mine. I don't mind that. That's okay.
Like, he's going to call every Australian Lyndon. What's going on? But shout out to the one and the only Glen Jennings, the manager of Tim Tszyu. You guys see it in the title. Tim Tszyu Manager Glen Jennings joins us to talk the Fundora rematch. So much to touch with that, and that's exactly what we're going to go right into. Glenn, it was we were under the impression from the outside looking in, it looked like No Limits was setting up a Keith Thurman, Tim Tszyu fight that seemed to be where the path was going. There was that looks like that's not the plan. How did the Fundora fight land to happen?
Look, you're right. I mean, there's always multiple pathways for fighters to go down, and you have to consider all of them. And Keith Thurman was very much an option for us, and we could well have gone that road. And Fundora came back into the picture through PBC, and we just opened up a dialogue on that based on the rematch from the first fight. And of course, the rematch is great, but you've got to, from our perspective, we just got to make sure that Tim was ready for that. And we weren't going to know that until we'd seen how he came back with Joey Spencer. We had a meeting, we all got together, everyone, promoter, fighter, coach, manager, and talked it out. And it was Tim's clear intention that he wanted to go back and exercise that rematch and go and prove, correct the wrong of what had happened with Fundora a year ago. So that's pretty much it, mate. When you've got a fighter like Tim Tszyu, Tim is all about the fights, as you know. He doesn't really back away from too much. So he would have been very happy to go with Thurman. He was very, very happy to go with back to Fundora with a belt on the line and try to put himself back where he was prior to Fundora 1.
So you just said it like to correct the wrong. I've called it like this could be a course correction for Tim Tszyu, and an opportunity for him to, as you mentioned, right or wrong. It is the belief of many anyway that if it was not for the cut, landing right in the sweet spot where you cannot stop the bleeding, and it's falling to the bridge of his nose, it's falling on both eyes, blurring his vision, stinging his eyes, he's having to wipe it off of his face. Many do believe that if it wasn't for that fact that, I mean, quite frankly, Fundora wouldn't even have a shot in that fight. how confident? I know you're always confident, Tim, but now that you've seen that fight, you saw what happened in those first 2 rounds. How confident are you in the team that Tim Tszyu gets the job done this time?
Look, there's something wrong if you're not confident in your fight and you're accepting these offers and putting him into these positions. So we don't ever doubt our confidence, and we don't get carried away with that either. The reality is that Sebastian Fundora is a very good and very awkward fighter, and he's improving all the time as they do. And also both the boys, Tim and Sebastian, have each had a good look at each other now in the ring, and so I think it'll be a bit of a different fight. But I think the big learning curve, while Sebastian has rolled on, the big learning curve was for Tim with what happened on Fundora 1, followed by Murtazalayev. So Tim had to really go back and dig deep and go back to the drawing board and look at all of the issues surrounding those 2 losses. So I think there's a confidence that comes out of knowing that you've done that homework and you've reworked those areas that you weren't good at, and you've improved in all of those. So I think that we'll go into the fight a better fighter, as Tim is a better fighter, better prepared as a team, and certainly not underestimating anyone or being overconfident with anybody. So I think we have the edge on the experience that comes from a loss like that. You really have to search very, very deep to correct those things that you made errors with in the first one. So Sebastian hasn't had to do that. He's continued on, and we hope that that Tim Tszyu goes into the ring a much better and more accomplished, more mature, and more patient than he has been.
Right. And this is Tim's first. I'm pretty sure it's his first rematch, right?
Correct. Yes, it's not something that we actively pursue. There's rematch clauses for a reason, and rematches have never been something that any of us have been all that fussed on. But in these circumstances, under the circumstances of what happened, I think it's fair and equitable, and it's a good outcome. And it was always our intention to exercise it, but we just needed to make sure Tim was ready.
Now the announcement came out, and the announcement was, "Hey, they've agreed to fight. The fight's going to happen." And it's kind of like everyone was kind of told, "Well, we'll wait for the details." Is there anything you could tell us of where the fight's going to happen, the date, location, all that stuff?
Yeah, look, there's a reason for that. There was literally so much load going on in the boxing world in that time frame of that announcement. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen more big names over 1 week all getting in the ring or all around the world. So it was sort of like an announcement, but it was a little bit protected. And PBC obviously have their reasons for that, not wanting to dilute their fighters going around last weekend and the likes. My understanding is it will be in Las Vegas. The date is all but done, and I'll hold on that because, again, I don't interfere with promoters and their releases and stuff. But and it shouldn't be too far away anyway. And I'll give a guess that Tim and myself will head to the US probably in the next week to make that announcement. But for now, I just have to park it, mate, and wait for the right occasion.
Okay. All right. So it'll be announced soon. Okay. So around next week it'll be announced. Okay. It is. I do want to ask you. I don't remember off the top of my head. Did Kasha ever have any rematches?
Yeah, he did. He had the rematch with Shambe Mitchell.
Shambe Mitchell. Okay.
Yeah, that was the only one, mate. And that was a similar set of circumstances, although it was more to do with Kostya picking up some injuries towards the end of his career. But he wasn't a fan of them either. It's just something that, because I've grown up with the Tszyu family, it's just there, and it's not something that's talked about all that often. But in the right circumstance, I think it's good to be able to, go back. And I don't think anyone would be too hard on Tim for exercising it based on what happened that night. Anyway, there was, as you know, a lot of things happened, and a lot of things were discussed, and a lot of things learned. So let's move on and all be better for it, and hopefully it'll be a cracker of a fight, and Tim wins the WBC belt, and we're back on top of the tree again.
Now, is this a whole brand new contract for this fight, or is this is this something to do with the rematch clause?
Oh, in terms of flowing on from fight one,
right?
Yeah, no, it'll be recontracted, mate. It's been over 12 months. There are no issues between either of our teams. It's been very amicable. It's just logistics, mate. You know how it works, and trying to fit another big fight into a puzzle. And there's so much going on in boxing right now, not just for us. I mean, geez, it's literally a bit insane, isn't it? The amount of activity that's going on, and fight cards being announced, and mega fights, and whenever you've got so much going on, it's like a big jigsaw puzzle. And until it all fits together, the promoters are cautious of announcing, because they may have to go back and change it, and nobody wants that.
Okay. So look, he's gonna do the rematch with Fundora, and there was a lot of news that came out of that, because there was an expectation that Fundora was supposed to fight Xander Zayas, and he's been stripped of the WBO belt. I'm sure you're disappointed about that, but that's what they did. And I just want to know what, like, just kind of like from a personal level, how do you feel about kind of I call them narratives that have been said about Fundora ducking Zayas, and he's going to Tim Tszyu route, because it's, it's what do you make of that? Because I kind of feel like the Tszyu fight's the harder fight, but for whatever reason, Fundora is getting accused of ducking Xander Zayas, who I don't see a name on his resume that suggests anybody should be ducking him, but that's my opinion. But how do you feel about it?
No, it's a fair question. It's not honestly not something that we actively discussed, Sebastian's other options. It really wasn't. We didn't give that a lot of consideration. We had an opportunity, and so we took that. I think there's part of Sebastian Fundora's makeup that he's a pretty honourable guy, and I think that, in fairness, I can, and I'm not saying this from him, this is just my thought, that perhaps he is honouring the rematch based on the fact that it was there first. And perhaps he's confident enough to say, I'll look after Zayas later. I don't really know, mate. I'm only just taking a guess at that. But I do know that he comes from a terrific family, the Fundora family. And while some might say it's not honourable to, use the word to duck. I don't think it's a duck, but who knows, mate? It's a crystal ball one, that one, as to
when did you? Were you guys in negotiations or anything when the WBO was still on the line, or did you already know they were going to strip him?
It was a fairly quick one, mate. So it was in there that it might happen, that he might lose it, because the first question I asked was, is it for both belts, WBO, WBC? And at the time it was, look, he's mandated to fight Xander Zayas. And that was probably the only question that I had. If it doesn't involve us, there's no point, having further discussions. The WBO belt would be gone, and we would compete for the WBC belt. So when we talked to Tim, it was only ever about the WBC belt.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll have to get that belt another way, right? But
yeah. Well, once you've got a belt around your waist, the options do tend to open up easier for you. And like I said in the first question, there are always many options for fighters at this elite level, and you really do have to be cautious and take your time and think right through. It's not just this fight; it's the pathway that follows, and you've got to look at the health and welfare of your fighter. You've got to look at what's next for him after this fight, and then after that, and I guess the big equaliser in all of this is a world title belt. So if you've got multiple options and one of them happens to be for a world title, it's very difficult unless there's circumstances jumping out at you saying no, not to take that opportunity, because that does change the pathways once you've got that belt around your waist.
Okay. Well, we're going to see what happens with that. Obviously, I know, like, from your perspective, what I'm about to ask you is something you probably don't really care about, but there's just a lot of talks in terms of when it comes to the situation with Xander Zayas. So, from what you know, and depends on what you can or cannot say, it could just be speculation, but would you say it's fair to say that Fundora is going to make more money fighting Tim Tszyu than fighting Xander Zayas?
Oh gosh, I honestly don't know, mate.
Okay.
I very rarely engage in what our opponent's negotiation is, only because it's we don't really consider that to be something that, so long as the outcome from my side is good, I tend to move on. Don't get too involved in other people's lanes. Xander Zayas, I don't know, I probably could lean on you a bit more than that. I don't know if he's a big seller. I don't know if his resume puts him into that category yet. He's a talent, but that's about all I can say about him. The marketplace is an interesting one. Tim Tszyu v Fundora 1 was the very first Amazon Prime show, and as you well know, you were there, very well supported, and the activity and the interest following that fight, because of the bloodbath and the outcome and all of that, sort of created a narrative that was a fight of the year. And so a rematch for a fight of the year is a given that'll be something that's highly interesting. And when there's a lot of interest, then there tends to be a bigger amount of money coming in, because promoters understand that. If you compare that to Fundora Zayas, will it sell out a stadium? Will it sell out a big venue? Will it do well on pay-per-view? I don't know, mate. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't, at this moment, I don't think it would sell all that great. I mean, I could be wrong, but do I think Xander Zayas look, he's very young. He's in his early 20s. He's got time. He's Puerto Rican, from New York. So there's a New York market, Puerto Rican market. Do I think he has a future if he keeps winning? Sure.
Absolutely.
No doubt about that. But as of right now, this moment, I just don't.
Yeah.
I just don't see it personally.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, and that's fair. That's a fair comment. Look, as a manager, I have to really seriously consider the commercial outcomes. It's very important to my fighter's future. So, again, it's like people said, "Oh, why wouldn't you take the Thurman option?" Well, whilst it's a great fight and probably could have brought it to Australia and it would have done very well, it's not going to be the same commercial arrangement as a world title for Fundora. So all of these things create a page for me. And if their boxes all tick, and Tim agrees and is excited and confident to go, then that's what you do. And I'm sure Sebastian Fundora did this, that his team does the same thing. So it may well be that Sebastian's going to earn a lot more money fighting Tim Tszyu, but I don't know that, and I would certainly never claim that.
Yeah, my speculation is I'm pretty sure like with all fighters, money is a big driver, and this is completely assumption from my part, but Fundora's going to make more money fighting Tim Tszyu than Zayas at this particular time. That's how I feel about it.
And fair enough. I mean, these are prize fighters at the end of the day. They have a small window of opportunity to make as much money as they can out of the sport, and provided all the other boxes get ticked and it all comes together, that's a great outcome, that they should be rewarded for that effort. I don't know too many guys, Eric, that would knock back a world title fight for a non-world title fight for less money, for less prestige, for less advancement and less pathway opportunities. End of the day, it's all about moving forward and getting the best outcomes.
100%. Now, credit to you. I mean, it would have been easy for you to just say, oh, of course he's going to make more money fighting my guy. He's going to make way more money fighting Tim Tszyu than Xander Zayas. But, you're keeping it real. So you don't know. So
no, I don't know. And I'm being honest with you. I honestly don't have too much of an interest in that. That's for the other guys' teams. I think you can become totally ensconced in all of this nonsense that goes around in this sport. But if you can just stay in your lane and try to do the very best you can within that lane and look out for your guy, let the rest of it pass by. Otherwise, you spend your whole days, chasing, and that's not necessary.
Now, I saw the poster, right? It's like Fundora versus Tim Tszyu 2. And I think the marking is brilliant. You might as well use the first fight to sell the rematch.
Sure.
Like they're all bloody. Probably the bloodiest fight I've ever seen.
They just got out of a paint, one of those. What's that thing in Europe where they smash all the tomatoes?
Yeah. Like they almost made wine with their own blood. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and like I'm looking at that, but I still remember, like, after that fight, and I still have the video. I did it with I mentioned his name earlier, Lyndon. We did like a live right afterwards, right?
Yep.
And I said, like, it's not going to feel this way right now because he just lost. Like, no one feels good when they lose, right? And of course, winning would have been the better outcome anyway. But given the circumstances, this is going to age well for Tim Tszyu. Like, it's not going to be a loss in the long run, right? Because people saw that he was a warrior, that he came to fight. He was blind, that he still kept fighting and gave people a hell of a fight. And I think many people, they may have had a lot to say about the team and they should have stopped the fight, but they weren't really getting on Tim, right? But I'm looking at that and I'm just thinking to myself, as you look back now, it's been 13 months, right? They're going to be using, obviously, the images of that first fight to kind of promote this rematch. And did you realize anyway at that time, like just 13 months ago, that there will be any silver lining, any positives coming out of the loss in Las Vegas?
I think I had a discussion, and I'm not sure who with or what interview, but it was just after the fight, and the only saving grace I could draw from being so disappointed and was the fact that we were launching Tim Tszyu into the US marketplace, and we were going out on a brand new platform that had never been tested, never done an event. So there were so many outcomes that could have happened. And whilst it was a loss and it was bitter and it was awful to experience, I don't believe we could have launched into the US market any better in terms of bums on seats, eyes on the screen, and lasting memories of two warriors who gave everything they could and throw in the bloodbath, and it was like a gladiator movie. Everyone was hooked. So from a manager's perspective and from a promoter's perspective, both PVC and No Limits, that would have been the saving grace, was that, wow, those who didn't know Tim Tszyu yesterday now know who Tim Tszyu is.
Yeah, for sure. And that was again a very bloody fight. You know, if it is like, if anything, if there's one thing, because I know you guys want to come to it, like you want to make it in America. This is the big, like, biggest economy in the world. This is the, if you want to say, the Mecca. And if there's one thing Americans like, is a comeback story, right? That is something Americans like a lot, actually, right?
Yep.
They like that big comeback story. Most movies about on boxing, someone's making a comeback of some sort, right?
Yep.
So here it is. So it's going to start with Fundora, likely in Vegas, as you mentioned. Going to be announced soon. For those that just came in, the date will be announced soon. And when you kind of look at it, right? Like, here is an opportunity for Tim Tszyu to start his comeback and do it in America, and in a weird twist of fate, a win over Fundora now in 2025, after everything he's been through, after going through what he went through in the year 2024. Now he's coming back, and it seems like a win over Fundora now, it's going to be more massive than it would have been if he would have beat him last year. If he would have beat him last year, it's what people were expecting. People would have just said, yeah, okay, he beat Fundora. That's what we all thought he was going to do anyway. What's next, right? But now, win over Fundora is going to mean that much more. It's going to be a bigger deal. And at the same time, he'll start that redemption arc that you know, does it feel that way? Is that it's kind of like what you're feeling at the moment?
Yeah, there's a bit of that, mate. To be honest, it's not jumping off the screen at us in terms of that. It's more for us it's more for Tim an opportunity to go back and revisit something that was just a 1 in a billion outcome with the elbow chop to the head. And what it did effectively was it derailed Tim, and we followed with a second loss, and none of us anticipated that would ever unfold that way. So with that comes a very, very strong desire to go back and reclaim what was yours, to rewrite the record books and put the last 12 months in the basket. And I just think that it will be a bigger win for Tim. It will be a redemption for Tim. In his heart and in his mind, I think it'll be quite possibly one of the biggest wins of his career. It's simply the fact that he did come back and he did win, and he did what he said he was going to do. So that's a great place to be in. And it's critical that you know your fighter is in the right headspace for that, to do that. So Tim is 100% switched and ready. So with all of those things in play, I think you're right. I think it will be, and I don't like to sound like I'm talking like it's already a win. It's far from it. But when Tim does win that WBC belt, he is effectively back where he was with a different belt prior to Fundora. So the wrong has been rewritten, the course has been re-altered, and we move forward with great anticipation of where he can go from there, mate. And that's exciting for us.
Now, the WBO belt, it wasn't really. I don't think it was like a recognized belt when Kasha was fighting, right? I don't think. I think it was the big three. It was the WBC, IBF, and WBA when Kasha was fighting.
Correct. Kasha was the champ of the 3-belt era.
Right. So now, like, Tim won the WBO, which is a recognized title now in the 4-belt era, but now he'll have an opportunity to win one of the belts that his father actually had, the WBC. Yep. Does that mean anything extra to Tim? Does that any extra special feel to him?
Look, I'm sure there'll be a part of him. Tim doesn't really think too much about that sort of thing. For Tim, it's very much a personal challenge about what he can do and where he can go. It is a nice synergy, but to be able to say that he's the WBC champ, as was his dad. And secondly, Tszyu was a very, very renowned WBC champ with the Suleimans for a long time, a very long time. So, yeah, I think personally for me, I love the idea of Tim winning the WBC belt. But for Tim, I think it really is okay. I don't think it'd matter which belt it was, but not the IBF with a rehydration clause.
Now, speaking of 13 months ago, when that bloody fight, and Tim, even though on the losing end, people really appreciated him as a fighter, and to come back to this last weekend, did you by any chance watch these fights?
I did. I had difficulty watching them because I kept dozing off. For me,
I for the life of me don't like. I kept shouting, "Throw a punch!" Like what's going on here? Fight after fight, just terrible fights. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Not all of them were terrible, but I mean, they were pretty bad. But I after this weekend, I do think that once Tim Tszyu's fight with Fundora gets announced and it's official, I think it's going to be some type of, like, I think people are going to appreciate the fact that, okay, these are two warriors, and that's the type of fight we're going to get here, because we're not going to get that type of fight from those two. It isn't going to happen.
Oh, look, I don't really know how to categorize what I've seen on the weekend. I just hope that I know it sounds odd, but I hope it's not a case of because there's, money being thrown around that's, extreme amounts of money for these great names, that they are being protective of it by just literally running around the ring and not wanting to engage so that they can do it again and again and get the bag. But you are right. The difference is that neither Tim nor Sebastian will not only will they not run, they won't take a backward step. So it's very much a clash of, let's call it old school versus whatever you want to call that on the weekend. I don't know what to say. I was just disappointed that names of that caliber on stages this big, that they produced that sort of a content for people to.
I think there is something going on, Glenn. I believe there's something going on because, like, one fight broke the record for the least amount of punches landed.
Was that 56 punches?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to believe. That's
in
really
a 12-round fight. Well, like, I mean, and then another fight broke a record for the least amount of punches thrown.
74.
That was a Canelo fight. Yeah, like Canelo threw less than 200 punches. And I'm a big Canelo fan, but dude, you can, and I understand his opponent was just running around the ring, but dude, like you only threw 170 some punches that in a 12-round fight. That is unbelievable to me. And just fight after fight.
Yeah, and of course, the difficulty is when you've got an international audience and they're on this big stage and they've been promoted so damn well. The disappointment factor was off the charts because everybody subscribed, everybody paid, everybody sat with anticipation, and everybody got the shits with absolute disappointment and probably saying, "Oh, I'll switch over to UFC. At least they punch. At least they punch on." That's not what boxing needs right now. So we need, the kind of Ben Chris Eubank fight was a classic example. That was a good crap. That was a really good scrap. They went at it.
Really good fight, yeah.
And everybody loved it. And credit to those two boys for doing it. But I don't know, man. Let's just hope this isn't a trend that's coming in now.
And then we get people that complain when there's women on the cards, but I mean, at least the women fight.
Yeah, the women get in there and punch on, and they actually don't take a backward step. But the backward step, or like you said earlier, the run around the ring, oh man, these guys aren't meant to be runners or joggers or track athletes. They're meant to get in there and punch. People
Yeah,
are paying to see them punch.
yeah, this was over the top. I don't know what it was. I did want to ask you this though, Glenn, and I don't know. Like, I've actually started on Twitter, and I'm going to continue to push for this. For a long time, boxing, the standard boxing ring size has been 20 by 20,
Yep.
right? And I'm okay with that. However, given fights where dudes are breaking records with the least amount of punches thrown, the least amount of action in the history of CompuBox, which has been around for like 40 years. I personally wouldn't mind if all boxing rings went back to the 18 by 18 standard ring that it was like in the 80s, 70s, 60s.
Yep.
I don't think it's an accident that we got a lot of action fights back then, and now we're seeing a lot more running now because you're giving them more room per square inch to run around. It's my opinion, but I want your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have no issue with that. No one from our side has an issue with that. I think there's a fundamental difference too in the weight classes with those rings, mate. When you got the littler guys that are super fit, they can train to run for 12 rounds. Once you get up into the bigger weight categories, your gas level goes a lot quicker. And of course, if one of the guys is track fitter than the other, then you haven't got a fight. You've got an illusion of chasing somebody. That's not boxing. And some people will say, some of the purists I've seen this weekend saying, oh, you can't be too critical. That was a tactical move. That was this, that, and the other. That's all well and good. But if it became a trend, people will switch off. Tactics can't. If tactics can't excite an audience, the audience disappears.
I can appreciate, like, I think people get the sense that I don't appreciate good pure boxers, but I do. I like fighters that stick and move, but you have to stick before you move.
Yeah,
it's not move, and stick once in a while. Like, it's stick and move, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with someone being on their back foot, boxing, as long as they're throwing punches as well, right?
Yes,
and I'll give you an example of one of your fighters back in December, right? Who got accused of running, but she wasn't really running. She was boxing, right? Which was Shannon O'Connell against Jazzy Parr, right?
Yep.
The difference was that was a good close fight. It was an action fight.
Yep.
Right? Was she on her back foot at times? Yes. But she was throwing, though. She was throwing punches.
Oh, and she was scoring great punches, and there's a difference of outsmarting and outrunning. You've still got to, like you said, it's stick and move, and the stick comes first.
Yeah.
The stick doesn't cut. You don't move, and then run in and try and find something. But these guys have no. They just didn't seem. When you're talking 50 punches over 12 rounds or less than 200 over 12 rounds, I don't even know if you could call it boxing because there is no contact.
You have to actually
fight. Very strange to me, and it was very strange that they rolled them out one after the other, and on such big names. It was very, very.
Look, I'll give credit to that one ref. It took him a little too long, but I think it was around round. I think it was like round 10. He pulled Skull and Canelo aside and told him, "Hey, you guys got to start throwing punches." And people kind of forget that a ref can do that. The ref has the authority 100%. To tell these guys to start fighting. Refs just haven't really exercised that much, but I think they need to start. Just my opinion.
I think there would be a degree of I won't say intimidation, but for the referees when you're dealing with such big names in the sport and the punishment that comes afterwards if you do make a call, just going back to the world that boxing is in now, forget the fighters and forget the fights for a minute. We live in a world where your attention span is based on about a 15-second opportunity to hook somebody on social media to get them to engage, and it's falling all the time, mate. people scroll now based on what they want to watch, and we've never had so much to watch in our lives. And you can go on to social media on a weekend and look at 30 different fights. Where are you going to stop, Eric? Where are you going to stop and pay attention? Are you going to stop when you see a Devin Haney that doesn't want to engage? You can see that in training videos and sparring, and you can see that anytime. Or do you stop at a Tszyu v Fundora where these guys are toe to toe, beating the tripe out of each other? So there is a risk in the commercial aspect of boxing that if we lose the audience to the fact that there is no engagement and they're not boxing, then expect the finance for the fighters to disappear with it.
Now, I do want to ask you, and one of the reasons, and this goes back to even before you and I were chatting, like I've been watching like Australian boxers for a while. And what do you think it is about Australian boxing in general? This is not just your fighter, just in general, that they just appear to just have a more exciting style. Like, what do you think it is? Because very rarely, I'm not saying it never happens, but very rarely do we sit down and watch a fight with like a no limit card, or even if it's the other promoters, and we're sitting there and we're wondering when are these guys going to throw a punch. It's very rare that we really see that.
Yeah.
Aside from, I know someone's going to say Sky Nicholson, but aside from her,
Yeah. Oh, the amateurs are a totally different field. That's their job. And when some of the amateurs come into the pros, they do struggle to make that transition, but they eventually get there. But they get there because they're put in with people that force their hand as well. Mm-hmm. So it depends on who they get put in with. But there is a bit of a spirit here in Australia. If you look at our history and where we've come from, and look at our military, and you'll very rarely find anybody who says that Australian soldiers and Australians who have gone to war, they have a very, very strong and robust reputation as scrappers who get in there and take care of shit. And that's why we've been allies of the United States for a long time. We've been in wars with them a long time. And that's why they speak so highly of the Australian diggers, because there's a spirit within Australia where if you're going to fight, you lay it all on the line. And when we're in the gym with the kids and they're coming into boxing, there's no discussion about tactical running, avoiding your opponent. There's smart tactics that go with boxing, but it's based on the fact that you're in there to fight, and your job is to not just win, but ultimately you're in there to try to hurt the dude you're in against. Yeah. You can't do that if you're dancing around the outside, bumping into the ropes and trying to avoid at all costs. So I think what you see when you watch a No Limit show is, and nearly everybody that gets on a No Limit card, because it's the platform, wants to perform for the audience. We're different like that. We want to perform. You'll always hear the Aussie boys will always say at press conferences, and I know it's a bit cliched, but they say, I just can't wait to put on a great show for the audience. That means a good stoush, a good scrap. And that's part of our background, and that's in our DNA. We love a good scrap.
There you go. Like it's when you watch one of the Australian cards, it seems to me it could be at any level. It could be in a prelim, mid card. It could be high level guys. It could be two guys with okay records. It could be two women. It could be whoever, and they come out to fight. I mean,
yeah.
So,
and there's a big transition too, Eric. When you go through the Australian marketplace, as Tim did and how Nikita is now, you reach a point where you've fought all of the opportunities in Australia, and you've gone against guys that are genuinely busting their ass to beat you. So they're good fights, and sometimes you'll have a first round knockout because you're just too good. Other times it'll go 10 rounds or 12 rounds, and you've been in a good scrap. Then you go overseas. Now, depending where you go, and depending on who you get matched with, it's a different world, mate. It's a different world for Australian boxers. We go over there, into a hostile environment. There's no Australian judges. You've got American referees. You've got American judges. You've got American camps. You've got American promoters and all of that. And then you go in against a guy who may, for the first time in your career, spend the whole fight running from you. And the Aussie fighters are like, shit, what do I do? Right. It's really an interesting thing. But I'm not just saying that about American fighters. It can be anybody that has that different DNA or that different thought process, that they can win the fight by not exchanging and by being a runner and just don't get involved. There's a headspace that we don't have, and that's sometimes difficult to transition to.
To go back here and talk about talking about cards in Australia, the Newcastle card,
yep,
or Zewcastle, as you guys were calling it.
Yeah.
Look, given the fact that Tim had just been through like 2 rough fights, the bloody affair with Fundora, and then he got knocked out by Mutrazaliev, and now he's going to be fighting a Spencer. Were you at all more nervous than usual before that fight?
I don't know what it is with me, mate. I don't really have a lot of nerves. It was more a feeling of this one has to stick. We have to make this one work. Without being, because again, it's not something you talk about with your fighters. The manager's way ahead, thinking about the pathways that follow. So the reality for Tim was that he needed a fairly dynamic win. Both for his own confidence and both to tell the marketplace that he belongs, and he got that. And the most important thing for me out of that fight was, if you get the opportunity to look at the demeanour and look at the focus on Tim's face in the Tony Harrison fight, and then look at you'll see the same Tim Tszyu in the Joey Spencer fight. There's a different look about Tim Tszyu when he knows he's in the zone. And it's the same look when he started Fundora up until the cut. You don't see that absolute focus at Murtalayev. And there's multiple reasons for that have already been long talked about. But go back, and so for me, to see Tim Tszyu perform like that, with that controlled composure and that stalking and that pressure fighter that we know Tim Tszyu is very good at, was a great thing to see. It's like, okay, sort of like the old Tim's back. And we drew some confidence out of that. So, no, I wasn't over nervous. I know some of the others were, based on the fact that we all wanted the best for Tim and we all wanted a big win. And that brings, a bit of a different thought process. But not a lot of nerves for me, and certainly just watching Tim's focus gave me a lot of confidence.
You know what's funny about that? Yeah, as I asked you the question, 2 things came to my mind. One of them is when Bob Arum was asked if he was nervous about someone Tyson Fury was fighting. I don't even remember who. And Bob's like, well, I'm not the one getting in the ring with the guy. It's just funny.
Yeah.
And the other one is Ali, that clip. I think it's from a movie where he's looking at his team before he's going to the ring with Foreman. He's like, I don't know.
What are you all looking so down about?
But yeah, I'm the one getting in the ring with him. At least act like you're confident. But there you go. So, look, a couple of things. Just one more thing about Tim, and I have some other questions. And you kind of already answered it, but was there a moment in that Spencer fight? It might have been even before the fight, but like during the fight, where you said, "Yeah, Tim's back," or do you feel like, okay, he's got it, he's good? Because even me, I was confident Tim was going to win from an analyst perspective, but there was that thing in the back of my head. Like, because it's always going to be there, because you don't know till you know. And
100%.
And I had like that feeling of like, well, I'm confident, but
Yeah.
What if he's not the same? Like, what if it's over? Like, what if Tim just doesn't show up that night and Spencer beats him?
No, they're all fair questions, mate. And I don't think you can be honest with yourself and say none of us questioned that as well. The reality for Tim was coming off the backroom fight. Was there any long-lasting psychological damage? He was cleared physically. There's no issues there. So that was the first starting point. So there was no problems in terms of his physical condition. Emotionally, he had an opportunity to have a good break and clear his head. And then ultimately, you then got to think, okay, all those things combined, does that mean that Tim Tszyu's back? Well, it doesn't until Tim shows you that Tim Tszyu's back. It's not about guessing or contemplating outcomes. It's about what Tim does and how he proves it. And to be honest, for me, I just sat. I always sit just quietly and watch and observe. I don't have a lot to say during the fights. And for Tim, it was as soon as I seen that straight-faced glare and the focus and the fact that he just straight on to where he was with the pressure on Joey Spencer's chest, didn't give him a chance to adjust, didn't give him a chance to think about, didn't give him a second to contemplate how do I deal with this guy, was for me like, yeah, I feel good about this. And each round he just worked into it, and then you see that in the last round it was just Tim Tszyu at his best, taking advantage of the good work that he'd done. So you come out of that fight, everyone was happy, everyone was smiling, and everyone was feeling great. And for me, I have a quiet smile, and I know full well that we now move back to the elite level, and that's where the big test will be. There's no easy fights for Tim Tszyu for the rest of his career. There are none. So you've got to be honest about that. Every fight now for Tim is going to be a war, and I believe, I'm confident that he's got all it takes to keep on moving forward, so long as the Tim Tszyu that we know and love comes to the ring on the night.
What motivates, like, from what you know, I don't know if you've ever talked to Tim about this or if he's mentioned this before, but what motivates Tim more? His supporters or the people that doubt him?
Well, the doubters were a new addition. Up until Mertzalayev, even after Fundora, there was very little doubt upon Tim. Mertzalayev was such a learning curve. We didn't expect that outcome. And when you have no expectation of that, it's not, people say overconfidence. It's hard not to be confident when you're fighting well and you're doing everything right. And Fundora we took as, without being too cocky, we probably or possibly would have won that fight without that cut. So there wasn't a lot of dark space. And yes, and Tim's been the first to say he made mistakes at Mertzalayev. He was trying to get rid of him too quick. That's never been a Tim Tszyu trait, as you well know. Tim's one of those guys that wears you down to the point physically and mentally where you don't know what left to do with him. And for whatever reason, he said it now many times, I made the mistake of thinking I could get rid of this guy quick. And when you get caught the way Tim got caught, and you can't recover, you're not the Tim Tszyu that we're used to fighting. It's just a skeleton of that person. So what motivates him on the back of that is, yes, the support's always important, but it's for Tim, it's very much a very deep personal thing where it's like, I let myself down. And I want to go back now and prove to myself that I'm better than that. And that's it in a nutshell. He doesn't make a big deal out of it. He's not dwelling on the losses. He knows he's got a job to do, and he's going to go out there and do that.
What can you tell us about last time I spoke to you, Nikita was having surgery. So
Yes.
where's he at now, and any fight announcements soon?
Yeah, Nikita's coming good, mate. The hand's taken a little bit longer. It was multiple surgeries on the one hand to get it right. So we're looking at bringing Nikita back into the ring in August here in Australia. Probably two fights this year. And I think that could ultimately take Nikita through to that'll be 12 or 13 fights for him. I think we'll most likely move onto the international stage next year, all going well. And that'll be exciting for Nikita as well, because there's only X amount of opponents in that weight division down here that will get in the ring with him.
Right. Someone has a question about Tim and PBC. You guys are still fight by fight with PBC?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's a great relationship. It's from a management point of view, you still have the freedom to exercise movements for your fighter. Okay. But I've got to be honest, the PBC and Louis DeCubis, Al Heyman, and No Limits have been outstanding for Tim in terms of opportunity and in terms of reward and pathways. So, yeah, very happy with that arrangement. And like I always said, I think the first interview you said, why did we choose that road? Well, that's where all the big guns are in our division. So it made sense, and it still makes sense, and there's still some big fights to be made. So yeah, we're very happy where we are.
Okay. Do you hear like the noise? Because there's a lot of people that don't like PBC, right? And have a lot of criticism about PBC just in general. Even I have criticisms about PBC, to be transparent. Yeah. But is it? Do you hear a lot of that? And people asking, because I'll even get people asking me, why PBC? Tell them to stop working with PBC. Like I get that a lot. So do you hear that? And what response do you have to that?
Look, I can only be responsible for our negotiations and our outcomes. For whatever reason, people are not happy with PBC. That would be their discussions, their contracts, and their outcomes. Look at Tim Tszyu, 1, 2, 3 world title opportunities. Very well rewarded. Pathways to move forward against some big fights for the rest of where we go on the back of winning. I don't have any reason to pick PBC apart. I mean, whenever we have negotiated, it's always been fair, and it's always been equitable, and Tim's outcomes have been terrific. So ask yourself, if Tim Tszyu was signed with someone else, are there any other promoters right now who could give a fighter 3 opportunities in a 15-month period at world title level? I'm not sure there is, and I'm not sure there's many other fighters who would be that available either, and who would take that risk and get in there. Tim's a fighter. I think that's one of the reasons why PBC liked him, is that he's not a 1 every 2 year or 3 year fighter like some of PBC's fighters are.
I was about to say there's a lot of 1 a year.
Yeah,
every 15 months.
And some of those are signed with PBC, and look, let's be honest, that's got to be a frustration for everybody. If you can't get your guy, you can make offers, you can put money on the table, you can put opportunities and opponents in front of your fighters. Unless you've got a manager and a team that are prepared to say, we will negotiate for the best outcome and then we will fight, it seems to me most of them just say no.
So there's been content creators, and I know some of them will watch this, right? But and it's funny. I always find it funny when people think I won't ask you something, because they're like, I bet you won't ask him this. I'm like, well, I'll ask him. I don't care.
Go for it.
Like I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? But I don't know how much of this is a question, but there are, and sometimes they're even in my chat, and they'll be like, well, it's because PBC, they pull the rug under Tim Tszyu's team with the Keith Thurman thing, and they did a switch, bait and switch, they call it, to put Fundora last minute, and that was the plan the whole time. It was never going to be Keith Thurman because for whatever reason they wanted to set Tim Tszyu up, right? That's one of the things I've heard.
Sure.
And the other one is they just kind of played you guys with a Jermel situation. They never had an intention to do a Jermel fight, and they just kind of stringed you guys along with that. So those are 2 points of contention people have with PBC when it comes to, I guess, the criticisms that they have of working with PBC.
Yeah, look, again, people. One thing we can't do in humankind is predict what other people's thought patterns are and what they feel. But look, the reality. Let's just talk about Jermel for a minute and the fact that fight got pulled. What can we do sitting in Australia, getting ready to rock and roll for that fight when we are presented with medical certificates to say that such and such can't fight for this reason? You either take that and move on, or you become the person that chases ghosts. And in this sport, with the window of time that you have, if you want to chase ghosts, you end up like Jermel. You fight once every 2 or 3 years. For me as a manager, it's better if it's not going to happen, and it doesn't matter for whatever reason. If it's something that's fabricated, how the hell do we ever prove that? What procedure is there to go and prove that you've been hard done by? It's no different to a court case in any country. If you want to pursue it, expect to be tied up in it for a long time, or put it aside, look at your fighter's interests and your fighter's commercial value and your fighter's commercial opportunities and get on with it. And so, again, it's possibly a different way of thinking in Australia where we just say, you know what, I ring Tim and I say, mate, Jermel Charlo's out. Do you want to take, Sebastian Fundora instead? Yep, let's do it. Or Keith Thurman's out. He's tore a bicep. Do you want to take Sebastian Fundora instead? Yep, let's do it. The aftermath of that is you can then whinge and moan and beef and create content and conspiracy theories. And you Americans are very, very good at conspiracy theories. Yeah. They're the leaders in the world by far. You can create a conspiracy around the opening of a Coke can.
Sure.
But Aussies just tend to get on with it, mate. And so that's just who we are. That's what we do. And I don't cast aspersions over anybody. If a fight doesn't happen and it's not going to happen, why waste another second on it? Get on to what's next. Keep moving. And I think that's the other reason why Tim is appealing to a lot of fans, and that is because he takes the fights. He wants to fight. He doesn't want to be sitting at home. He loves to fight, and if I can get him well rewarded and get him opportunities to fight for world titles on big platforms, then so be it. That's what we're going to keep on doing.
Keith Thurman also posted photos of the tear and all that for those wondering. And I know with the Jermel situation, I know he posted like the cast and stuff. Did they have to send you guys like proof that he had that injury?
Don't think we didn't have our doubts. We did. We did have our doubts. But once somebody has said they're not fighting and the fight's not happening, there's nothing we can do. What do? Do we go and engage lawyers and go to court and somehow magically make this guy turn up and hop through the ropes? Never going to happen, mate. Never. So what's the point of wasting all the time and the energy? It's unfortunate. It's disappointing. It shits us to tears that the preparation goes so long for one fighter and they pull out. But that's on them. That can't be on us. And they need to wear that round on that. They were the ones that pulled out. Now, if it's legitimate and he's broken his hand and he's in a cast, man, we're moving on to the next fight. But if it turns out that there's ample proof that was hidden down the line somewhere that anybody in boxing pulls something like that, then they'll be answerable to others. They'll be answerable to the fans and everybody else, and hopefully the commissions. But I think the reality is you've got to make a decision right there and then to keep on moving, mate.
One of your fighters, the Bull, Gratch, Tavila too.
Yeah.
It didn't go his way this time. He gave him a rematch. Will there be a trilogy for that fight?
We've asked for it, mate. We had a bit of a disappointing night, to be honest. Brandon was the bull was really in about as good a place as we could have put him to go in for that fight, and he was just very disappointed in himself. He's just sat down and apologised to everyone. He said, "I just didn't deliver." He said, "It felt like I couldn't deliver. I don't know what it was. I need to go and re-look at this and work it out." So credit to him. He's taken the loss like a man. We've asked for the third fight. Talivaha for now has said no, and so we'll move on. But you never know with those fights. And in the heavyweights, that opportunity hopefully will come around again. I think it'd be good for at 1-1 to do it together again, and it's an exciting one. They both love to punch.
Yeah, for sure. And then of course, Cooper O'Connell, he had a successful pro debut.
Yeah.
What did you think of his performance? I mean, obviously, I'm sure it's kind of expected in a pro debut, but I think he looked really good. And what's the plan next for him?
Yeah, it was great for Coop to dust off that first one, wasn't it? And I was really pleased. The kid's only 18 years old. I was really pleased with his level of maturity, the way he handled going onto a big stage like that, and handling the media and the press and doing all the stuff that a lot of the guys turning pro don't have to do. He spoke beautifully. He's very articulate, but I was also very impressed with his composure in the ring. He was very, very smart. He'd done what his coach asked, and he had a relatively easy win. And he made it look easy with his skill set. So we're going to keep Cooper busy. I'm looking at putting him back in as early as June next month, and possibly again in August. So the key now is for me just to expose him to some different styles of the pros, some more maturity up against some more mature guys, just to let him find himself and get away from the amateur mentality. But he's very much focused and fixed, mate. He's going to be a really good prospect, this young guy. I'm excited for him.
For sure. We'll see what happens with that. And one more. What's up with Chan O'Connell? It looks like it's crickets. I saw Jazzy Parr as a fight.
Yeah, can you believe that? Against somebody that she's already beaten.
Yeah, she beat her in her second fight.
Yeah, that's a shame.
A one-sided fight, by the way.
Yeah. And we offered her the rematch, and unfortunately her team said no. And yeah, it is a bit crickets for Shannon at the moment. I do have one thing I'm working on right now, which would be great for Shannon, but we've had some good talks, and she understands that she's coming to the end of the road. So one way or another, I'll put her back in the ring, whether it's for her, an opportunity for her to say goodbye to the Australian audience, because she's been a staple for 20 years, and I think we need to give her that, send her out on a nice note. Hopefully I can do better than that and get her an opportunity, but it's been difficult, mate. It just seems like we're hitting closed doors everywhere we turn, and it's very frustrating for me and for her, trying to get it over the line. But hopefully, I'm always the optimist. Something will come along.
All right. Well, look, we've chatted quite a bit. It was a lot to kind of talk about when it comes to Tim Tszyu. So, as you mentioned earlier, there'll be an announcement later, either next week or so, right?
Yeah, I would think so, mate.
Okay.
It's just it's sort of out of my hands. I leave that with the promoters. They'll just tell me when and where, and we'll get across there and do that. But looking forward to it. I know Tim and everyone's looking forward to it. I know the fans will be, and we should see great re-engagement off the back of that first one. It's great to see Tim back at this level. It's great to see him have another opportunity to grab a strap and go back to where he belongs. And the future for Tim Tszyu is bright. He's just got to keep on winning, mate. That's the key. Keep on winning.
We'll see how it goes. And you have a good one, Glenn.
Will do, mate.
All right.
Great chatting with you.
For sure. All right, the one and the only Glen Jennings, everybody. And I just want to thank MAW here. Thank you for the super chat, brother. It says, boxing fans, Z-Style, Glenn, and Shaq, great opportunity for Tim to avenge his loss in this Fundora rematch. First was definitely a bloodbath. Winner versus Xander versus Virgil. Please smash the like button. Absolutely, man. This is the end of the road, everybody. Peace out.
You're now listening to Hispanics Causing Panic, baby.